Good morning, and may the peace of Christ be with all of you. I hope you are well and safe at home. Normally, for most of us, Sunday morning means getting up, getting ourselves dressed, and going to church. Well, now we're learning new ways, not of going to church, but of being church, being the body of Christ wherever we are in the world. Still, we share in the word and in the community of faith. I hope that at least wherever you are this morning, you are more comfortably dressed and situated than you might be if you had to sit in a wooden pew at church. So we'll take that as something. The gospel for the fifth Sunday in Lent is the story of the raising of Lazarus. I want to focus on just a few small words that sit at the center of the story that normally we would probably overlook as insignificant. The words are, "Yet even now I know. Yet even now I know." I see them as kind of the hinge, if you will, to the story that opens it up to our own experience. Well, Jesus and Martha and Mary and their brother Lazarus are all friends of Jesus. Jesus has word that Lazarus is ill, but by the time he arrives, Lazarus has died. We then get the shortest verse in the whole Bible. Jesus wept. Jesus sees the grief and sorrow on the faces of Martha and Mary, and he is so moved that Jesus weeps. In our burial services, we always pray, "Lord, you wept at the grave of Lazarus, your friend. Comfort us who mourn." God in Jesus Christ comes to us in our most difficult times, in times of loss and sorrow, and shares our experience, shares it with us. The God we've met in Jesus does not condemn or judge, does not send famines or life-threatening viruses as some kind of punishment. The God we meet in Jesus is the God who comes to be present with us and to share our most trying and difficult days. Well, Martha will have none of this. Martha's angry. "Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, our brother would not have died." If at any time in the last few weeks the thought has even briefly crossed your mind, "God, how could this happen?" then maybe you're not as far from Martha as you may have thought. I know I've been feeling angry. I feel angry when I watch the news. I can feel it welling up inside me. And living in close quarters these days, it might be a good idea to pay attention to that. But anger always grows out of fear. It's been said that anger comes from fear as smoke rises from fire. And the truth is, these are fearful times, and we are all feeling extraordinarily anxious. And we don't feel there's anything we can do. It leaves us feeling powerless. And that's something none of us like. We're used to being able to deal with problems, to take actions, to make a difference. Right after 9/11, C.J. Craig said, "In times like this, people need to feel like soldiers, not victims. Feel empowered." But of course, there's not much we can do. Washing our hands and staying home is necessary, but it feels pretty passive. Some folks have gotten very creative and have found ways in which they can feel they can act. My wife Kathy has spent the last several days studying and then manufacturing over an old sewing machine masks. So far, she has produced 2 of them. But it helps her to feel that she's doing something, and we've enlisted the help of our families, and maybe we get the grandchildren involved. They too will feel that they have something that they can do, something that they could maybe give out to a neighbor or whatever. But the truth is, we're all left feeling pretty powerless in this. We're all left in a state of quiet, anxious waiting, in which the ground under our feet does not seem very firm. It's at that point that we join our voices with Martha and with people of faith all around the world and say, yet even now I know. Even now I know that the God we have met in Jesus is the God of healing and health and wholeness, the God who wills our well-being. A title in an article in the Times this week said, "Where is God in a pandemic?" Well, for me, God is present at countless bedsides this morning. God is present in all of the healthcare workers, the providers, all the people who support them, whether they clean the hospital or make the food or take care of things back home. God is present in those places. I believe God is incarnate. The word literally means in flesh. God is incarnate in the Latina nurse who lives in the Bronx and leaves her family in the care of someone else to travel to the hospital in Manhattan, where she works in the ICU and cares for people she's never met, at risk to her own well-being. God is present in all those thousands and thousands of retired healthcare providers who volunteered almost immediately to come in and do what they could do to help out in New York, and I'm sure all around the country. One of the oldest hymns in the Christian tradition says, "Where love and charity are, God is there." Yet even now, I know, even when the ground does not seem firm under our feet, I know that the God who's brought us safe thus far will bring us safely home. Even now, I know that the God who holds us and sustains us will never let us fall. One of my first teachers was Dean Jess Trotter. He taught theology. He and his wife Marta suffered a terrible personal tragedy. They shed many tears. But years later, Jess wrote a book called Christian Wholeness. And in it he said, we can fall through our language about God into nothingness. But we can't fall through God into nothingness. I've been to the bottom and found it firm. The ground on which we all stand is the firm ground of God's eternal and steadfast love for all of us. Yet even now, I know. Finally, of course, Lazarus emerges from the tomb. But he's still wrapped in the burial shroud, the cloth that holds him in, that binds him. Jesus says, unbind him. To whom is he speaking? Well, I guess the crowd, who by now probably is gathered. But I think he's speaking to us. The cords of death that bind us are the cords of fear and anger and helplessness, the cords of doubt and uncertainty. To unbind them is to set us free, to set us free to live the life that God calls all of us to live. Well, how do we do that? I have one small suggestion. Generosity. Let us all take this time to be generous. First and foremost, generous with ourselves. Let's be kind to ourselves. Let's literally give ourselves a break. Take time to rest, read, pray. Do whatever it is that you can do to restore yourself. We always in the confession say, we confess for things left undone. I've got news for you. There are always things left undone. Let's be generous with ourselves. Let's be generous with the people around us, with people we care about. Let's be generous with maybe people we haven't seen in a while. Whether you communicate by text or a good old-fashioned handwritten note, reach out to someone and see how they're doing. And if you really want to be generous, make it someone with whom you haven't always gotten along. And be generous with those you do not know. There are people in our own city, in our own communities, who struggle every day with food insecurity and access to medication and transportation. Find an organization that you believe really speaks to them and serves that need, and be as generous as you can. It's a good time to be generous. It will help to heal our own souls. I want to close with a verse of poetry from the Irish poet and priest John O'Donoghue. This is a time to be slow. Lie low to the wall until the bitter weather passes. Try as best you can not to let the wire brush of doubt scrape from your heart the sense of yourself and your hesitant light. And if you remain generous, time will come soon, and you will find your feet again on fresh pastures of possibility, where the air will be kind and blushing with beginning. May God's peace be with you.